I read somewhere that on your debut record, a lot of the songs kind of came together in the studio.
Yeah.
Was it the same then this time around?
No, because the big difference was that because we say studio, but there's a difference between our sort of writing studio
Sure.
and the recording studio. And with the first album, we didn't have a writing studio. We recorded a lot of ideas in our flat, and then went to different kind of studios around London, and worked on the first record like that. And so there was a lot more of there was a lot less planning, and a lot more of like just being surprised by what would happen in the studio. And in that sense, it was a lot more pieced together, sort of like a puzzle. On the second record, we spent a year in our own writing studio, sort of with quite a lot of recording equipment and just demoing quite intensively and trying to figure out where does a song sit, how are we gonna, what's the instrumentation gonna be like, what's the arrangement, those kind of things, and which helped us have a much greater sense of what we were going to do when we were going to go in an actual recording studio. And that's when we moved on to New York for 2 months and just properly did it there.
Was it important to move to, well, I think it was Brooklyn where you
Yeah.
went? Was it important to kind of separate yourself from your usual surroundings?
Yeah, I think so. I think it got to the point where we'd spent a long time in London and a long time in that kind of writing and demoing process, and I think that as much as that was great, and we worked really hard and we all really liked what we were coming up with. I think that kind of got to a stage also because we decided to work with Nicholas, who produced the record with us, and he has a studio in Brooklyn. So that was obviously the reason why we went there, was actually mainly to work with him. But it was good for us, I think, to get out of London and to go somewhere, just a kind of fresh surrounding for the final kind of recordings of the album. I think it gave us a bit more of a sense of energy, and also it was summertime in New York, so that was influential somehow.
Yeah, did you think that this environment, did it change the way you experienced or perceived the songs that you had written in London?
Well, there was... well, for example, with New Ways, there was this, so it was, like we just said earlier, it was the first song that sort of felt like it was clicking, and that was something that could maybe be part of the record. Like a lot of images came to mind, and a lot of them were sort of like a slightly sunnier surrounding and more urban in the sense of, buildings and concrete. While maybe If You Leave was a bit more of a winter record and a bit more about landscapes from a visual perspective. So it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that we went there also because we had that in mind, or at least, I did to some certain point.
The sun.
Yeah, the sun, and it was really nice to do that in the summer, to have some daylight and heat when we would go outside. Also it's a really interesting place, New York, where it's so big and it's so full of people, but you can also feel alone really quickly. And there was a really beautiful view from Nicholas's studio onto Manhattan, which was really inspiring. Just that, because he was in Greenpoint, and sort of North Brooklyn, and just from his roof, just being able to walk upstairs and then to have a cigarette because we don't smoke, but.
You can still admire views if you don't smoke. It's fine.
Yeah.
But maybe.
About this visual element quickly, because your music has been used quite a lot in popular culture, in television shows and those commercials, that kind of stuff. And in my experience, your songs do conjure up a certain image. So for you, is making music a very visual thing?
I think I've thought about this before. I think maybe all three of us potentially have a different view.
I would say so. But still, kind of even though the view of what kind of image that image would be, I think I think we'll kind of like there's an idea of maybe associating music and kind of, you know, seeing something while you make that music.
Yeah, it's very subjective.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, it's a really, really big thing. I think I need to be able to see something, to be suggested something visually from the music, to be able to take it in, to really believe in it. I think I find if I can't really see anything, it doesn't really inspire me. But it's very vague, and it's not like it's not something like synesthesia. It's more like almost intellectual.
Right. And go ahead.
No, no, I was just going to say that I think probably your way you visualize stuff and mine is different, but I think that's because of the lyrics. I think it's obviously like I attach visuals that are very almost like memory based, so it's actual situations and people, whereas I think you're probably it's more of an abstract thinking.
What kind of changes every night, you know, if we're going to play those songs, and then I don't want to ask Elena what the lyrics are about, because I just, then I'm able to kind of imagine or picture a certain thing that's going to obviously change if I'm affected by, well, you know, the way she performs the song, and or maybe I'm in a different mood one particular night, and I'll start imagining something. So it's always good to kind of be able to kind of change my interpretation of a song.
And in that sense, and Elena, because you do write the lyrics, are they always? Do you have those memories or those words already done before the music, or can the music also drive what you write about?
The music can definitely drive the lyrics. I think, most cases it tends to be. Most cases on this album especially, it kind of tends to be that they were sort of written together, but I feel like maybe the lyrics writing kind of seems to just fall out in blocks. So I think that often it would be like I would have had something kind of written and gone like, right, I don't know what this is and what this is doing, and kind of like work around in a very sort of collaborative and very kind of like free way, just see what happens with it. But there's other songs where it's been solely music first, and then it's kind of, there's a song on the record called No Care, which just started off with just a guitar loop, and then I got a mic and pressed record, and then just kind of didn't have anything written down and just sort of ranted things out for however long, and they make up basically the lyrics of the song. So some stuff is very stream of consciousness, and then other stuff is, I guess, ideas that I've just accumulated that have then eventually kind of come out as songs.
And then Igor, you mentioned the word loneliness, the certain type of loneliness that you can find in New York, and obviously loneliness is something that returns on the album. Were the lyrics already written before you went to New York, or did some of that also come from that kind of?
They were everything was already written before, yeah. But then obviously, like, you know, in many different ways we've been, you know, experiencing that through the years since If You Leave was made, and then to kind of, I guess, just before we went to New York was when we were kind of finishing all the writing off, especially lyrically. It kind of was all done really before. So I think there's kind of like 2 years of traveling around and like accumulating all of those sort of emotions and feelings up, and then it was just about waiting for them to somehow make sense in there and then fall out again. But I think there's definitely there's these situations where you can feel very lonely in a very, it's almost not actually it's not really a rational thing. It's kind of like you can be in a room full of people and feel totally by yourself, and it's actually just not, sometimes it's something that is more of a mind, like a state of mind, than it is an actual physical thing.
And then, well, you kind of touched upon it already, Remi, but you don't really discuss the lyrics amongst each other.
Yeah, no. I think the thing is, on this record, I think they're fairly more obvious as well than on the one before that. So there's maybe just less
to
talking.
A certain extent, obviously.
There's a lot less to talk about in terms of I think they make, they just speak for themselves. Yeah, and also I guess you say all you have to say really in
in the song kind of thing. Like, it feels like if I wanted to discuss the minute details of stuff, or like who is the subject or whatever, then I, you know, would have written their names in there or whatever. But yeah, I think it just depends. Some songs are, sometimes we've spoken about and some we haven't, I guess. It's just like, some things you talk about, you ask your friends, and some things you don't, and I guess maybe that's a similar thing, I don't know.